Good afternoon. I'm Heidi Thompson, your legacy lifeguard with Lifeguarding Legacies, and welcome to another edition of the Monday Noontide. Today, I'm super excited to have on my show Dave Collinsworth. He's the legacy guy of 3C Mobile Studios, and we'll get to talk to him in just a minute. I just want to remind you that Monday Noontide is a weekly episode, as long as I have a guest to show up on the show, to talk about local Phoenix businesses. And I am an estate planning attorney, so I help people with wills, trusts, and all those probate, all those kinds of legal issues that come up in making sure that we have your legacy lifeguarded. So now we get to introduce my friend Dave Collinsworth of 3C Mobile Studios. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hi, Heidi. Thanks so much for having me today.
I'm glad to have you here. So, Dave, so my audience can know a little about you. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah. I'm married and I have a 12-year-old daughter. Her name is Lily, and I have a 3-year-old son. His name is Samuel, and they're so much fun. I'm actually really glad that there's such a big difference in age, because I think by the time my son came around, I had forgotten what it was like, and it was just like a whole new experience. So it's a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy being a dad, and it's just the best.
Well, and family is important to you, which makes a lot of sense when we start to learn about your business. It just makes a lot of sense.
It's kind of
So
important.
tell me about your business.
Yeah. So, like you said, I am the owner and operator of 3C Mobile Studios. We do legacy conversation videos. Now, a legacy video is basically where your parents, or if you are an older adult, you talk about your life. It's usually a question and answer session where you're telling stories and you're talking about your wishes for their life. It covers a lot of different things, but it can be as specific as you want it to be. So you can either tell specifically stories from a certain period in your life, or you can tell, you can make sure that you cover all kinds of genealogy questions about your, the heritage that about. You can talk a lot about your own parents, that kind of thing, so that, as much is preserved as possible of, where your family came from. And that kind of guides to where your family is going. So yeah, as far as the process goes, the way that it's a whole entire system that we created for capturing your legacy, right? So you start out with this very comprehensive questionnaire, but it's simple. It's a multiple choice, so it's not like you're having to write out tons and tons of questions and all that kind of stuff. But it's very simple. But what we do is we have the person that's answering questions about their life, so usually the parent, will have them take the questionnaire, and then the adult child, or whoever it is, it could also be a spouse that you're having this conversation with, that's asking you the questions. So either way, whoever it is, it can be any loved one that you feel comfortable talking to. But at that point, we'll have them also answer the same questionnaire, but from their point of view. And then what we do is we mesh those two together. So we find out what you want to talk about and what the other person actually wants to hear about. So, and since you only have 2.5 hours on video, it sounds like a long time, but it goes by pretty fast when you're talking about your life. And you want to get the things that are really important to you, the things that you think really define your life and why you were successful. So by finding out what the most important things are to you and the people that are closest to you, we can get those things. We can make sure that we get those things on video. Now, of course, you can always do more sessions, and you can cover every aspect of your life, and we can do them recurring, every 5 years, or big milestones and things like that. But in case anything happens, between now and when you do that next one, we want to make sure that you got the most important things, that if anything should happen, at least your kids will have something that comforts them, and your grandkids and great grandkids and great great grandkids will have more than just a record of your life. They'll be able to watch you talk about your life and talk about the things that are really important to you. And I think the bigger thing is why they're important to you, because a lot of times they'll say, oh well, he was a great businessman, or she was the best mom ever, but it's really like the values and the reasoning behind those values, that is really the instructive part. Because you can tell someone, well, just be a good mom. That's not helpful at all. But if you say, your mom says, well, I focused on these particular values, and it's because of this that I learned from my mom. And those kind of things are what connects you. And you're like, oh, okay, so this just isn't a nice thing to say. There's a real reason why she's saying this, and a lot of times the thing that happens is you don't have time for that whole backstory, right? So you just say the thing that you want. So you say, I just want you to listen, and or I just want you to do this, I just want you to do that. But you have to go to college, it's super important you go to college. Well, okay, well, why? What's the purpose behind it? Like, the whole entire story behind those things is what gives it meaning and gives it weight, right? So,
Mm.
because otherwise it might just be like, okay, well, mom wants me to go to college, but I don't think I need to. But if you were to hear her whole entire story about why that was important to her, um, it's different. It has weight to it. It's like, okay, well, if I decide not to do this, there, I better have a really good reason not to do this. So it's just, it, there's a there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things I think that people think, oh well, I already tell my grandkids stories. I already tell my kids stories. But the thing is that even if you were to tell your stories and you give that back, that context, and they actually understand, because also grandkids don't always understand if they're not at the right maturity level to understand. But even let's say all those things are true, and you have a conversation with every single one of your grandkids, and it's a fantastic, beautiful, meaningful, deep conversation about legacy and your wishes and all those things. Your great grandkids will never hear those stories, because you just can't tell that story the same way it was told to you. It's not possible. You can be like, oh, she had the best story about whatever it was, about making lasagna with her mom, and it was amazing, but you can't tell that story the same way that she told it, because so much of it is the way that she tells it, the emotion behind her telling it, just all those kinds of things where it's just not the same, and it doesn't convey the same value, that hearing it, like watching your loved ones talk about their life and talk about what they think is really important. um, and on that same kind of note too, it's interesting, because a lot of times the things that you might be known for, even if you're famous, the things that you might be known for may not be the things that you think are most valuable about your story and about your life, and just all those kind of things. Like, it's one of those situations where you know your kids might say, oh yeah, he was, like I said, like before, like he was a great businessman, or he was a great CEO of a company, or whatever it ends up being. But the like, that's not what's important about that story. It's what your great grandpa did as a clerk, to work his way up, over the course of 30 years to become the CEO of that, and what were the values behind that progression, because not everyone ended up as the CEO. He started at the bottom and he worked his way all the way up to being a CEO or a vice president, or having his own business that was successful, or something like that. But it was those little things that only he knows were important, that you can't see from the outside. You can't, even if that, he was your great grandpa, that he was a CEO, that all these facts about his life, but you don't, without the story and without him telling the story and what parts were actually important, you don't know exactly how to replicate that success. And so it ends up becoming an issue where, in the case of like failures, your grandkids and great grandkids end up having the same failures. You see that a lot. you know, yeah, mothers,
Absolutely.
someone becomes a mom at 15 and then their daughter becomes a mom at 15 and you're like, how does that even happen? Like how do you, but they didn't talk about it. Like they didn't talk about like, okay, well, these were the little steps that led up to that thing. Or whatever it is. And it's it's all the little things that you can capture with a legacy video, about their life and about their stories and the meaning behind those stories that makes it so powerful.
Well, and we're
So
all
that's
made
what we
up
do.
of successes and failures, all of us.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense if we can capture all of those, the different sides of it. It brings to life who we really are
Yeah.
in all of the human grand glory, right?
Right. I mean, the idea is you want to build on those successes and you want to learn from those failures so that your family doesn't have to keep going through that.
Makes sense.
And there's just no, I mean, I've been doing this for a while now, and there's really no better way to pass that on.
Because people aren't
Maybe,
going to write it down.
right. And even if so many people are doing legacy books and things like that, and those are fantastic. If that's all you have from your, or if you have a journal or a diary or something like, anything after your loved ones are gone becomes a treasure. Really, it becomes priceless. um, but the thing is the whole purpose of leaving that is for it to be instructive, right? So that they can learn from your successes and from your failures and from who you were as a person, your values. But that only happens if your great grandkids read it, right? And so, barring that nothing happens to that book for hundreds of years, it's very hard to copy a book. So anything happens to it, it's gone. But barring that nothing happens to that, you have to rely on the fact that my great grandkids are going to actually read a book, which that's not a given the way trends are going with reading.
Well,
But
and let's face it, we all got those parenting books where we're supposed to record everything our kids did, and how many of us actually filled them out? I mean,
I
we
have
all have them.
I have one on my shelf right now. It's not filled out.
So we all know. All right, so we've got this great video that has such incredible promise to what would something like that cost? That seems pretty amazing.
Right. So it's actually super reasonable. We are um, so it depends. With regular legacy video companies, it'll range anywhere from about 1,000 to 3,500, 4,000. It just depends on all the options. At 3C, we have a very standardized process, and it's $1,500. That includes the whole entire questionnaire and all the planning to get ready for it. It includes the 2.5 hours on camera, all the setup and breakdown in your own home, in the comfort of your own home. So you don't have to come to a studio. You don't have to go somewhere you're not comfortable. It's a whole entire system that's made to be very comfortable, very inviting, so that you can make a real connection with the person you're talking to, because they are your loved ones. You want to have those meaningful interactions. And so, we created a space specifically to facilitate those meaningful those meaningful conversations with the people you love most.
And one
Um,
of the things that's really different, you've got something that's really different between you and most of those other legacy systems that's pretty significant.
right. So legacy videos have been around for a couple decades now. They've been doing them, like small filmmakers and things and people like that have been doing this kind of stuff for a while. But what they've been doing is what's called like a legacy interview, or just a standard legacy video, and that's a question and answer session. So yes, we have questions that we want answers to. That's part of the process of bringing out those stories, but it's not the same. So in a normal legacy interview, um, me as the interviewer would ask your parents the questions that you want to know. So I would ask a question, they would answer a question back to the camera, or they would be talking to me, but they don't know me, so they don't have a rich history, they don't have a deep connection with me. I don't know the other half of their stories, I can't finish their sentences, I can't, it's not the same, right? So I might have insightful questions as a skilled interviewer, but I can't get really deep with somebody
It's
like
just
you
one
can with your
dimensional.
own. It's
Yeah.
very, yes. And it's also very much generally, you're, like I said, you're talking to a camera essentially. Whereas with what we do at 3C, it's what I developed it. It's called what I like to call a legacy conversation video. And the conversation part there is it's like a 60 minutes or like a 20/20 where both of you are on camera. So if it's you and your adult child, you're both on camera. And so the camera switches back and forth. So you're talking, you're answering questions, your loved one or your adult child is smiling and laughing, and there might be a few tears, it just, but it's this back and forth where you're part of the conversation. And the really beautiful thing about that is that your kid, your adult child, after you're gone, they can relive that conversation by watching it, because they're there. They hear themselves asking the questions. They see the looks on their face. They see the look on your face. It brings you, instead of just bringing you back to that story that they remember, it brings them back to a whole entire conversation and a whole entire, this whole event that we create for you. And then after that, we edit out anything that shouldn't be in a professional video or anything you don't want in your video. And sometimes there are problematic things. And so we edit those out, and we provide you with a digital copy so that you can copy it as many times as you want, give it to the entire family so no one has to fight over it. And then we also give you an archival grade Blu-ray, which is made, it's a special type of Blu-ray that's made to last, 1,000 years. So, you have that, always have that hard copy in case something happens to the digital files. But for most people, the best way to preserve that video is going to be to make a copy and then upload it to their cloud account. So either, their iCloud or Google Drive or any, Dropbox, anything. There's a million of them now. So, and then that way you can share it. It's safe forever. And your great grandkids will actually get to enjoy that. I mean, they'll actually watch it because it's high quality and it's beautiful and it's a meaningful interaction. And it's, a lot of times, especially in the case of your grandkids and great grandkids, they know your adult child. So they know the person that's there. So they're like, oh yeah, this is back when when my grandma was 40 years old and her dad was 75. Like he's not he's not around anymore, but she's still there, and it's that connection. And so it just adds so many layers of connection that's just pretty amazing.
And so what do you hope families will get out of watching these videos? How will they use them?
Yeah, so the great thing about it is that it's for your own kids, it's very comforting, right? So whenever you lose someone, it's super comforting if you can see them and hear them. So many people I hear they save a voicemail message from their parents or their loved ones that have crossed over. But they, you know how much better is it to have them actually talking to you and having this like rich, deep conversation that really means a lot. I mean, it's completely different. So I think it's just such a comforting thing for the people that actually knew you. And then it's also instructive. So my hope is that your adult children and grandchildren, great grandchildren, that they watch it every year, perhaps on your birthday, as just a remembrance, like just like a lot of families put flowers, at the headstones when, every year on their birthday. I would like, I, I would really love it if families were to watch these videos of their loved ones that have passed away. And that way they can feel like they're still connected. And also when they're ready for the stories, when they're at a maturity level where they can appreciate what's being talked about, they'll receive that thing, right? So you have to be at the right place in your life and your own maturity levels to receive that story and what it actually means. So by watching it over and over and over again, you get something different every time. And that's kind of the power of it. Whereas, you're probably not going to spend 20 hours rereading a memory book, but you'll watch 2.5 hours, of something that's high quality, and it's just, it's very engaging. So that's what
That
I
makes
hope. I
sense.
hope
That
people
makes
watch
great
it every
sense.
year.
I love it. All right. So if someone was interested in doing one of these legacy videos, how would they reach you?
So if you want more information, the best way is to just give me a call. Realistically, you can call the office at 602-566-0853. Or you can also go to the website. So you can go to Connect, Capture, Cherish. That's what 3C stands for. ConnectCaptureCherish.com. And there's all kinds of information there. There's sample videos, all that kind of stuff. But really, if you have any questions, if you're like, I don't know if this is for me, or my parents are in assisted living, can you do it there? Or whatever questions you have, you're not the first person that's had that question. So if you're, whatever it is that is stopping you from getting it done before something happens to the people you love most, like there's no time like the present. We don't know, for any of us. I don't know for myself what's going to happen tomorrow. So, you know I, and that's why it was so important to me. My parents are only in their 60s, but it was important to me to get their stories while they're still able to tell them, and while they're still around and in great health. Because you never know. It's the worst thing is waiting and then saying I wish. And
Yes.
that's and it's the same thing with what you do with protecting the financial side of people's legacies. Once it's too late, it's too late, and the damage is done. So it's, unfortunately, it's one of those things that you just have to have sort of your own motivation to do. And just like, because usually by the time circumstances are pushing you to do it, your parents are already losing their memory, they're already suffering from Alzheimer's or something happens, they're in the hospital, they've got a cancer diagnosis. You don't want to wait till then. I mean, that's
No, live
it.
a life without regrets. Live a
Yeah.
life without regrets. Own the
Yeah.
moment. And if this is something special that you think you would like to do, you should do it. This is,
Yeah.
I mean, how comforting would it be to know that you've got that with you, that you can listen to anytime you need to hear mom's voice, dad's voice again, that you can um, hear the things that mattered to them and what their experiences are. I can really see the magic and the value in that. So,
No, thank you.
well,
Yeah.
Dave, thank you so much for sharing today on the Monday Noontide. It has been a joy to have you here. I do encourage you, think about the loved ones in your life. Think about the ones that you'd love to hear their voice and capture while you can, and preserve that so that your kids and their kids and the kids after that all have this piece of legacy that they can hold on to and cherish and gain joy from and learn from. This has been the Legacy Lifeguard of Lifeguarding Legacies on our Monday Noontide. Remember, if you need an estate plan, even if you think you don't have an estate, the state has a plan for you. If you don't want them making all their decisions for you, you need to make your own. And that's when you need to call me. You can reach me at 602-529-1827, or you can look on my website, lifeguardinglegacies.com, where you can book an appointment and find lots of useful information all the time. Again, thanks so much for being with me, Dave, and I look forward to next week's episode of the Monday Noontide. Have a
Thank you,
great day.
Heidi.
Thank you.